The United States is actually doing something significant to help Ukraine. I know that there have been a bunch of false starts on this in the past, but this time it is happening. But the value of the US contribution is subtle. Even if you saw the headline, you might not think twice about it. So today, we are going to have to look at a map and learn why Russia may soon be feeling the burn across the home front. The strategy here is interesting, so stay with me. But we need to begin with the White House's move in the context of the last 9 months of diplomacy. The Wall Street Journal is reporting, and Reuters is independently corroborating, that the Trump administration will provide Ukraine with intelligence to assist Kyiv in striking energy infrastructure deep inside of Russia. Now, intelligence sharing is one of the cornerstones of the US-Ukrainian partnership. 2 months into the invasion, the United States set up a coordination post at Clay Kaserne, a base in Germany that serves as the headquarters of the US Army Europe and Africa. This allowed the parties to discuss potential opportunities. Ukraine might indicate a desire to attack a particular area and ask the United States for information about potential vulnerabilities. Alternatively, the United States might see a target of opportunity and pass it along to Ukraine. For most of the Biden presidency, however, the cooperation was limited to what was happening inside of Ukraine. So the United States might pass along some information about what was happening along the border with Russia, but a line was drawn with helping Ukraine execute missions on the other side of said border. After the Democrats lost the election in November 2024, there was a brief window when the United States dropped that restriction, and also approved cross-border U.S. weapons use, though notably the window was limited to activities directly connected to the border. Then Trump came into office and promptly reverted the policy to restrict coordination to inside of Ukraine and Russian troop movements related to that. Of course, this status quo lasted less than 2 months. After the Oval Office meltdown at the end of February, the Trump administration briefly withheld all intelligence sharing. During that period, Russia retook almost all of the Kursk salient, with Putin having paid a visit there, though it is unclear whether the intelligence gap was the main cause of the collapse, or if Ukraine's position had generally become untenable. Either way, Zelensky adopted the ceasefire policy that Trump wanted, and the United States restored intelligence sharing. But there are 2 major changes to the policy today that are happening simultaneously. 1, Trump is opening the door to long-range strikes. This is no longer about border issues. This is about attacking Russia wherever it will hurt the most. And 2, Russian energy infrastructure is not only fair game, but it is actively encouraged. Also encouraged are other NATO countries sharing their intelligence for this purpose. This is designed to be a team effort. Now, I suspect that there is a temptation to look at the headline and dismiss the intelligence support as unimportant. But let's dig into why this is actually a huge development. At its core, we are looking at a game with Ukrainian drones and missiles on one side, and Russian air defenses on the other. In a normal world, where a defender is properly prepared for an attack, its defensive assets are evenly distributed throughout the country so that no single area is particularly vulnerable. In turn, the attacker has to fire a ton of missiles in the same direction, hope that the barrage overloads the corresponding defenses, and pray that a couple of them get through. But Russia is far from prepared. It does not have enough air defenses, especially as Ukraine has increased its offensive output over the last couple of months. Under this scenario, Russia has to constantly shift its air defenses around. It cannot leave them static, lest Ukraine discover the holes that inevitably have to exist and destroy everything within the opening. This is the best explanation for why we have seen a sharp increase in damage to refineries. Every day, Ukraine places some bets, and some of those bets find a hole, leading to the big booms. Note that when Ukraine succeeds here, it is a combination of brute force and pure luck. Ukrainian intelligence cannot see the distribution of Russian defenses and strategize accordingly. It is possible that they may have some moles planted inside of Russia, relaying some information, but it would be very difficult to receive live and reliable updates. However, you can imagine how nice it would be if you could directly observe what Russia is doing. Then, no matter how Russia distributes its limited defenses, you could find the hole and smash it. Well, it turns out that the United States can directly observe these things, at least to a fair degree of accuracy. So, moving forward, Ukraine is going to be hitting its targets with much greater regularity, rather than having its bombs harmlessly defended away mid-air. Let me just underscore the value here. At one point, I was trying to compile an accurate list of Ukrainian energy infrastructure attacks. But the mission has expanded to the point that I might as well put one big X over Western Russia. If that was all happening without US assistance, Ukraine was losing a large percentage of its payloads to Russian air defenses. Take these numbers with a grain of salt, but Ukraine might send out 100 drones on an average run. The Russian Ministry of Defense says that the peak reached 300. It seems that very, very few of those drones get anywhere close to their intended targets. Despite that, Ukraine has taken out roughly 30% of Russia's refinery capacity, on top of another 10% or so undergoing regularly scheduled maintenance. The Kremlin has even started to import gasoline, despite the significant problems I raised with doing so the last time that we discussed Ukraine's big oil power play. If US intelligence allows Ukraine to, say, double its successfully delivered explosives, it is unclear whether the Russian oil industry even has a functional business model in the western section of the country. Meanwhile, the Russian government is experiencing budget shortfalls and deep underlying questions about how to continue funding the war to its current degree. If the energy infrastructure campaign is successful, then the Kremlin may have no good answers to those questions. And that is before we consider what this does to the political situation inside of Russia, where gas subsidies are supposed to quell any domestic discontent, but instead long lines are forming, as gas stations do not have the supply to satisfy all customers. Remember, the social contract that the Kremlin has with the Russian people is that the Kremlin can dictate foreign policy, and everyone goes along with it, as long as it does not affect their daily lives. Well, it is now affecting their daily lives. One more caveat here. It is possible that the United States started sharing this intelligence information a couple of months ago, and the reports that we are hearing now are just delayed leaks. If so, then the reason we have seen the influx of successful attacks since August is because of the new intel, not because of a large increase in Ukrainian drone production. In turn, we ought not to expect an acceleration of damage over the next couple of months, but rather a continuation of the current level of damage. Yep, the joys of trying to understand causation under a heavy fog of war. I am not sure that this is consistent with what we have seen politically in the West, however. Trump has spent the last month or so trying to get Europe to join in on stricter sanctions to completely cut off Russian energy exports. Europe has brushed those off, because unanimous voting processes are difficult, and Hungary and Slovakia like their gas imports. Well, that diplomatic route now having failed, an alternative is that the United States assist Ukraine's efforts to impose kinetic sanctions. So perhaps here we are. The effects on the war and Russian domestic politics aside, I want to temper what this says about the Trump administration's general attitude toward the conflict. It would be tempting to look at the potential for serious damage to Russia and conclude that the United States has pivoted to firmly backing Ukraine. Well, this might help quell the conspiracy theories that the United States has been helping Russia all along. And I also think that this clarifies that Trump is aware that more coercive leverage is necessary to bring the Kremlin to the bargaining table. But the central problem always has been that Trump does not want to take costly actions to accomplish that goal, so the goal has been left unaccomplished. In that light, I want to explain how the current reality falls in a middle ground, and I will start by playing down the significance of this signal. The main cost associated with gathering intelligence of this type is the construction of the surveillance network, say, launching a bazillion spy satellites. But those are fixed costs that were paid a long time ago. The marginal cost associated with giving Ukraine the information is whichever intelligence desk you are paying to process and forward the information. And to further downplay American generosity here, there is a very selfish reason to assign staff to this project. It provides them real-life experience doing it, and that real-life experience is directly applicable to a conflict with China. In fact, we have discussed the importance of a surveillance program to counter a potential invasion of Taiwan before. So, in that regard, Ukraine is an incidental beneficiary of a program likely designed to help on the front that the Pentagon cares the most about. And although the intelligence decision is also wrapped in further speculation about sending Tomahawks to Ukraine, remember that Europe will still be paying for them. Again, not costly. Oh, and yes, I did swear yesterday that the focus of today's video would be Tomahawks, but real life gets in the way. Tomahawks next time, I swear. Anyway, to flip things around, there actually is a real cost that Trump is paying here. And I do not mean any threats that the Kremlin will retaliate against the United States. Let's save that for the discussion of Tomahawks, where the United States would actually be providing something explosive to Ukraine. Instead, I mean economic harm. The energy market is bifurcated between countries accepting and not accepting Russian commodities, but they still track each other. So if you remove Russian supply, this will raise gasoline prices globally, including in the United States. Now, once upon a time, this would have been a disaster for the good old US of A. But now Uncle Sam is the world's largest gasoline exporter, so there is actually money to be made there by removing Russian competition. Still, the net political effect here is not so good for a couple of reasons. First, gasoline is an input good. Businesses use it to output other goods and make even more money. So raise gas prices, and some of those businesses become unprofitable. That has spillover effects to the rest of the economy, even if the oil companies are enjoying higher profits. Second, American consumers will see the effects of this every time they go to the pump. There is a reason why politicians are generally sensitive to gas prices. It is the one thing that most Americans purchase. The price fluctuates rapidly, and it is very visually displayed. By itself, it accounts for 3% of the Consumer Price Index's inflation calculation. Put simply, Americans will see a hit to inflation because of this, and it is worth spending some time explaining why this is such a big deal. When Ukraine was trying a similar refinery strategy a year and a half ago, the Biden administration was furious. Inflation was a central concern, because there would be electoral consequences for him if gas prices spiked. He even made the pitch to Zelensky that it was in Zelensky's best interest to keep energy prices low, lest there be electoral turnover in the West, and the new administrations might not be so favorable to Ukraine. Well, some of that fear may have borne out. The Democrats lost the November 2024 presidential election, and Trump came in and indeed was very disruptive to Ukraine's war strategy. But fast forward to October 2025, and now Trump is supporting something that Biden was not, even as the United States' military donations to Ukraine have fallen off. We are about a year from the 2026 midterm elections. Special elections have not gone well for Republicans since Trump took office. Throw in some inflation, and next year could be a bloodbath. So there is a significant political risk that Trump is taking here, even if it will be a while before the consequences become apparent. Meanwhile, what is apparent is that now is the end of the video, and if you were not sure, here are 2 fantastic books about the war. Check the video description for more information about them. And if you enjoyed today's video, then please like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you next time. Take care.